Hello and welcome into our Monday morning Corn-Fed Sports in the Morning. I'm Pat Radigan. Joining me as always is Gage Peak. We got a busy week. It's our actual first game week. We got some soccer on tap, the red-white volleyball scrimmage. Still a couple weeks out from football, so we kind of got a mix of it all here over the next week and building into game week a couple weeks from now. So we'll jump right in. We'll start with a little bit of football and mix it in. So Gage, start us off with our Corn-Fed 5.
Yeah, going up. We just finished 2 weeks of fall camp practice Saturday. Going into, I guess, this week, week 3 of fall camp. What position has really caught your eyes during the first couple weeks of practice?
It's the easy take, with what you knew coming in, but just the talk that the assistant coaches and, Amir Abdullah has had over the last couple weeks has really opened me up to what the running back position is going to be capable of. And that those guys are not just positioned, they're not just to fill different roles. They see potential in these guys as every down type backs, meaning that they can fill in all the different situations. Coach Ron Brown said that you look at kids on film and you see something on film, but when you get there, you just hope that you didn't mess it up. And they don't think that they messed up seeing any of these guys on film and what they're really capable of. And so I just think that when you look at the running backs, when you look at the depth that they're going to have, how they kind of fit into the up-tempo system, how we kind of have the pistol option and some of those different ways where we can incorporate multiple backs, read options, pull options, a little shovel pass. There's just a lot of ways to get those guys involved. And so when you look at that kind of depth and you look at that kind of playmaking ability, just the numbers that the freshmen put up last year and the number of touchdowns, the number of big plays that they made. They make a handful of those plays this year. 4 or 5 touchdowns for each guy. Amir gets his. Imani scores a couple of, that's a lot of production out of that backfield, but I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities. So you just see the potential for a lot of production. You see that, the running backs are going to be able to put up some big numbers. Maybe not just one guy, but by committee, I think they're going to do some pretty impressive things.
Absolutely. You have possibility of having 2 true freshmen playing this year with Adam Taylor and Terrell Newby. So it'll be exciting to see, who all gets the ball this year. Moving on from that, Saturday, Coach Pelini announced some injuries in fall camp that have taken place in the last couple of days. If you want to give the fans a heads up on that.
Not just the fact that they're not going to be Kevin Williams is going to be done for the season and just announce some of those different things. It's also just, some of the other injury news. Jake Long coming back into the mix, and they expect him back sooner than possible, or sooner than they expected. Some other guys are nicked up, getting back into practice. Some wide receivers are sitting out. Some defensive tackles have been in and out. Defensive linemen just in general. So it's been, the story that you expect, but you haven't seen anybody big go down. You haven't seen anybody who's expected to play a big linebacker position with a foot injury. Any of those kind of things that have happened in the last couple of years, or lower leg injuries from some of the guys who you really need to put some miles on in the defense. And so that's encouraging that some of those bigger guys, some of the guys that need to fill some of those roles are getting back on the field, and you haven't seen any of the big injuries from those positions. So,
well, I disagree with you on that, though. Kevin Williams was probably a possible starting defensive tackle for
I'm saying the guys who they're saying have to be a key player.
Okay.
When you look at that position, Thad Randall is the guy that they're looking. They're talking about some other guys filling in. So there's guys that obviously he can still come back and develop. He can still come back and bounce back. And Bo mentioned it's kind of a cleaner injury. Obviously you mentioned whenever you say somebody tore up their knee, it's not good, but it's cleaner, he can bounce back. So not necessarily saying that it's one of the guys who's a senior, one of the guys who won't be able to come back as a junior college guy. And so he'll have another chance to bounce back. He'll have an opportunity to get back in the mix of things. But the guys who are there can fill in and pop right in. So far they've had some injuries, but they're injuries that are positions that can really absorb it.
Okay, moving on from football, we're going to change gears, go into volleyball. A little late to this party, but volleyball's media day was last Thursday, football stadium. What are your initial thoughts, kind of impressions from, I know, granted it's just a media day and just a few interviews here and there. What were your initial impressions from that?
I think that there's not as much shock and awe as people might think with it. And everybody's kind of saying they're young, that they don't really know what to expect from them, they're unproven, that they all feel like they're pretty proven. They all feel like they know what they're capable of. They feel like in that gym that they're worried. Obviously, who wouldn't be worried about the team they've got to face in the red-white scrimmage and the alumni coming back, and they make jokes about that. But against other college teams, they stack up pretty well. And so they still have that kind of swag about them. Coach Cook is a master of playing little games and getting his team motivated and getting inside their heads in the right way. And so he said the right things. He kind of pushed the right buttons. But as we'll get to, and I say what segment, he mentioned that there is some great possibility there. So that's just what the impression that took me over is even from the young players. They're more afraid of walking up to the microphone than they were of answering any questions or saying anything bold about what the team was going to be doing. And so they had confidence once they started talking about the team, and you don't really see that a lot, that their personality is overridden by their on-court confidence. But that's what I saw, is that they didn't, they were shy, but when they started talking about volleyball and what they expected from the team, they had confidence enough to know exactly what they were saying, and you can tell that they've all been saying that kind of same thing behind closed doors. So it'll be interesting to see if that confidence and that in the gym type confidence will carry over and really show once matches start up. So it'll be crucial to see how the first couple matches play out. But from what I can see, they're going to start strong, and they're going to be a strong team throughout the year.
Yeah. Staying with volleyball, Nebraska's picked 4th in the Big Ten, 10th nationally. You think that's a little too high or a little too low for this young team?
I think when you look at the national ranking, you can say that, yeah, it makes sense they fit in, that they don't have the people in the positions who, I mean, obviously when you just kind of put the pieces together, if both these players stay at Tennessee, if it's kind of that same thing, you give more credit. So since they're moving, it kind of takes a little hit on them. But when you look at 4th in the Big Ten, I mean, to say that they're going to go through conference play, I mean, conference every single year, even for some of these teams like Michigan last year, like Minnesota, teams that were picked above them, they've benefited from young players, and they've kind of been surprise teams in conference because of young players. So to pick Nebraska in the back because of their young players, because of some of their transfers, I mean, it didn't make as much sense to me. I mean, obviously, you look at how it shakes out in the national polls, Nebraska is 4th in the rankings there. But I just think when you really look at it head-to-head, when you look at competing every single day, day in and day out, Nebraska's still got a physical lineup that most teams can't match, and they have depth that most teams can't match.
And number 1 recruiting class.
And not only that, but they could be running a 6-2 system. They could be having 2 different right-side hitters that are putting up double-digit kills in matches at times if Amber moves over there and if Morgan's playing on the opposite side. So they can go back to some of what they did in their last year in the Big 12 in just obliterating teams and just not even giving them a look at taking clean shots. And so there's a lot of different options that Nebraska has. That what they lack in experience, they make up for in depth, not only just along the front line, not only just hitters, but defensive specialists, liberos that can match different styles, that can come in and play in the back. I mean, Coach Cook didn't really abuse the increased substitutions rule from last year, but now he has a ton of more options. He has more people that he's willing to put in there and have competing throughout the season. So he's going to be playing. It's going to be more of a chess match for him, and he does well with that. And he's shown that he can compete in the Big Ten. He can really match up with other teams and knows what's going on. So he mentioned that they all kind of were studying up for the Big Ten teams and studying game plans already. When it comes time, they're going to know exactly what they have to do to be successful in the Big Ten. I think they're going to finish much higher than that 4th.
Okay, all right. I think I agree with you on that one. Last but not least, for our corn-fed 5, number 5, the Nebraska women's soccer team, they played Colorado College Friday in their exhibition game, first exhibition, only exhibition game this year. They won 2-1. Talk about that. What'd you see out there on the field?
I think that obviously, you say 2-1 in an exhibition win. People are wondering, why wasn't it more? People may have expected something bigger. It's just one of their only Division I sports at Colorado College. They're actually in the Conference USA. Yep. They're playing more serious competition. This is a better team.
They were NCAA qualifier, too.
This is a better team than most people assume. So they controlled the game. They dominated the game. They got their 2 goals. And then Jordan Jackson actually played center back with Marissa Hayes on the sideline for the whole second half. And so you have your best offensive player who had the first and who just looked unbelievably good out there for what she's coming off of and for this being her first game back out there. But she looked in control. She looked confident with the ball. She was really instigating things up front. And then when she wasn't there in the second half, the younger players stepping in, some of the freshman forwards stepping in, Mamie Conroy controlling the ball, and the wide players, Carolyn Flynn and Katie Kreutner, were really stretching the field. And they had a lot of opportunities. They could have probably punched one in, but they were just moving the ball so well that the defense for Colorado College was getting sucked in, and they were really doing exactly what they wanted and getting the corners and playing it in the middle. And so for a team like Nebraska, who's kind of struggled to find that consistency, who's kind of struggled to impose their game all year long for the last couple of years, what they were able to do and the fact that they were able to have that kind of composure, that kind of control, and just hold on for that win. I mean, the goal for them came after the 2-0. It was against the run of play. It was a pretty nice shot, and so it's not like you can really say it was a close 2-1 game. I mean, if Nebraska needed to score more goals in the second half, they could have. And I think they just kind of showed that if they can do that and they can have that same kind of control and dominance and consistency in some of their non-conference games, that can really set them up for a run. So it was really good stuff from them in an exhibition game.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna take a quick break right here, and then we'll come back for our second segment, the Say What segment.
All right, welcome back for our second segment. It's not only our second segment, but it's our second run at our Say What segment. So it's where we take a closer look at some quotes and some sound bites from different Nebraska athletes and study them a little bit closer. So for this segment, we're going to look at 3 different clips from Nebraska Volleyball's Media Day and just kind of build up some anticipation going into the season. So we'll start it out with a clip from Coach John Cook. So we'll start with that for our first clip.
Okay, so you see what Coach Cook had to say about him not ranking the Nebraska volleyball team in the top 25. Do you believe this, or do you agree with him?
He later said that he didn't really know that you could vote for your own team and some of those different. So he chalked it up to a little bit of that. But I could see him. I mean, obviously, you know that one outlier isn't really going to mess with your team. It's not really. I mean, if one vote is really putting your team up or down, and he doesn't worry about rankings to begin with anyways. And so just the fact that he would do that and say, hey, there's at least one voter out there who doesn't think you're a top 25 team. I mean, he could use that to motivate his team. I could even see him doing that, saying it anonymously, not even knowing it was himself, saying, hey, here's one ballot, and this guy said you guys were a top 25 team. Whether or not it was him, I don't think he'd tell him that, but he just does those kind of things. And I think he really can feel right now that his team hasn't proven that. But I think after he sees him in action, after he sees him, if they live up to their potential, I think they'll prove that they are, in his mind, even a top 25 team. So for right now, he might see them as outside of that because they haven't played a match together, but I think that in reality he thinks that they're a top 25 team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be crazy if you didn't think that. But we're going to go on to our second one. Haley Thramer's going to start talking about maybe a different look at the season with Nebraska being ranked 10th. Okay, looking at what Haley had to say.
The first one to mention national championship. I mean,
yeah,
at any media day to be the first person to throw the national championship out there is a little intense. But obviously, from her, I mean, being the senior who suffered an injury, for those who don't know, she'll be out for this year with a knee injury, so she's not even actually going to play out her senior year. But she's going to be kind of a player type coach figure, and so for her to put it out there, I think you'd expect it. And I think that obviously everyone, I mean, you saw it last year with women's softball. They expected to get to the Women's College World Series, even though they were picked 64th, and they made it into that final 8. I mean, there's I mean, we'll get to it more with Coach Cook's next comment, but there's a precedent for this, especially in volleyball, for young players, kind of unproven players, for people to count them out when they get to that postseason to just come alive and to just show what they're capable of for years down the road. So you might see the freshmen early in the year. By the time they get to postseason play, they could be playing like sophomores. They could be playing like they're more experienced and playing at a different level than where they started the year. So I think that that's not completely out of the question. I don't think that it's completely absurd for her to say something like that. And so I think that level of confidence is what you're going to see throughout the team this whole season.
Yeah, going to the last Say What segment that we have. Coach Cook's going to talk about some freshmen and even throw in a Johnny Manziel quote. So we'll take a look right now. All right, look at what Coach Cook had to say. Can you relate those two? Can you relate the Nebraska volleyball team with some of the teams that he mentioned?
I think so, only in the fact that if to just say that with freshmen, to just use that in a generalized sense would, I think, be a little trite and wouldn't really make as much sense. But when you have the number one recruiting class, when you have people, the other thing you didn't talk about is transfers. And you've seen that in basketball. You've seen that in football and some of the places where transfers, I mean, look at Russell Wilson, what he did in the Big Ten in his last, I mean, that's
Nebraska
the kind
basketball
of year
maybe this year
that I can see for Kelsey Robinson is to be one of those figures who comes in right away. They talk about how he was a captain right away. She was a SEAL team leader right away. She showed her competitiveness right away. And so I think when you have that mix of transfers, when you have that mix of young talent, I can see the comparisons to some of those younger teams to making big runs. And so I don't think he's crazy for pointing out what young talent can do, especially when it's a deep and the top recruiting class in the country, not just in their views, but in the actual views of those who judge their volleyball recruiting classes. So I think when you actually look at the merits of the state, when you look a little bit deeper and say, yeah, they have an All-American that'll lead the team, they have another All-American who can contribute as a setter, and then they have high school All-Americans, they have people who played at the national team. All those things are what you see from some of those, the UConn women's basketball team, from some of those different places you mentioned. You see those same factors, the national team talent, the mixture of pros, all those things. And so I think when you put all that mixture together, I think he's right on in thinking that the expectations for this year's team, can be really high.
Right.
All right, well, that wraps up our Say What segment and wraps up our Corn-Fed Sports in the morning for the show. We'll have our radio show tomorrow morning. We'll come back with another Corn-Fed Sports video. Got practice again this week, and so we'll have more football headlines for you, as well as building up to the red-white scrimmage this week for volleyball. So for Corn-Fed Sports, I'm Pat Radigan.
I'm Gage Peak.
Thanks for joining us.